how our church is reckoning with our ties to enslavement. I would like to begin by saying the names of the people that you are going to hear about today. Their names are Sam, Savara, Jack, Nell, Paul, Suki, Isaac, Frank, Het, and Maria. And they are members of a family who were enslaved and sold by founders of my church, East Liberty Presbyterian. Their enslavers' names were Jacob Negley and Barbara Anna Weinbittel Negley. So we'll begin by telling you a little bit about how this session is going to go, but before I do that, I would like to ask my co-leaders to introduce themselves. Dr. Beverly Harris-Shentz, would you introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Beverly Harris-Shentz, and I am what I like to call COVID member of ELPC. I joined in 2020. I've been a member for 5 years and am a member of the Facing Systemic Racism Committee that's responsible for this effort.
Hello everyone, my name is Alex. I've been a member since last year and I've been a member due to peer pressure thanks to Beverly in the Facing Systemic Racism Committee, and looking forward to joining this conversation with you all.
Thank you both. So my name is Holland Barmer, and I am maybe 20-year member of ELPC, East Liberty Presbyterian, that's what we call it. And I am an elder in our church, and I'm also one of the co-leaders of our Facing Systemic Racism team. And I want to acknowledge a few members of our church in the audience here. They're over here. Thank you for being here. Jessica Coleman and Dr. Linda. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about how today is going to go. So we have a session in 4 parts. The first part is talking about the context, a little bit of about our church as an organization, and that will tie into the activity that we are going to do at the end. We would like to tell you a little bit about what we learned. We have a full-length presentation that you can view on YouTube. We have QR codes over on sheets on the side, but we can't cover the whole thing in this session. So we'll tell you a little bit about what we learned about the family. Dr. Harris-Shentz is going to let you know what we've done so far and some possible directions of where we might be going. And then in the last part of our session, the bulk of our time will be spent on justice work in practice. It's an interactive session that will be led by Alex. So a few things logistically. I want to let you know I will be talking about violence, sexual violence and murder. I will pause at those moments when I mention those so that you can prepare. Another notice up front is that we have some reproductions, as Alex has mentioned over here, of some of our primary source materials. And then last, we respectfully ask you to hold your questions until the end after the interactive session, because we found that presenting this material can lead to some very deeply detailed questions, which we are, of course, eager to answer and eager to receive, but we also want to share with you the other material that we have for you today. So I'd like to get us started by telling you where we started as a church with this particular project. So in 2023, we asked Dr. Brock Baylor of the University of Pittsburgh to come and speak to us on the history of white supremacy and racism in the Christian church. And what was a very general question, a very general request for Dr. Baylor, received a very specific answer. Dr. Baylor came back to us with what you see here. This on the screen is a bill of sale. That is, it is a receipt for the sale of 2 women. Their names are Nell and Paul, and they are being sold by enslaver Jacob Negley, one of our church's primary founders and donors, to a man named Robert Spencer, a well-connected tavern owner and businessman. The year is 1808, and the women are being sold for $250. So we were sobered and curious to learn more about these women, and with the guiding voice of our now retired pastor, the Reverend Dr. Patrice Fowler Searcy, we began this journey, and it was her voice admonishing us and urging us to do this work, and we're very grateful for that, because that was one of the things that has brought us to where we are today. So I'd like to zoom out a little bit to our church itself to give you the context. How many of you have at least seen this church or know of it? Okay, so a few facts about our church. We are historic. We were founded in the year 1819. This is actually the 5th building that has been on this site over the past 200 years. We are a large church. We have 817 active members, and we are currently growing. We are a historically white church, and our membership is less racially diverse than the city of Pittsburgh. A few specific statistics are that we are 79% white, 17% Black or African American, and we have fractional percentages of members in the Latinx, Asian, Middle Eastern, African, and Indigenous communities. So we see ourselves as a progressive church. We are committed to radical inclusion and anti-racism. And the people that you see here are some of the members of our Facing Systemic Racism Committee. Now, besides our stated values and the way that we live in community, this committee is a manifestation of our church's organizational commitment to anti-racism. And now I realize that might sound strange and that might sound tepid, but this is related to the activity that we are going to do later, where we talk about justice work in a community ecosystem. So the important thing about a committee to understand in the context of our church is that a committee receives a budget. A committee has a voice at church governance meetings. And so this is one way our church organizationally endorses the work of anti-racism. Now, it's important for me to say that our work is not without resistance. We have pockets of individuals who might disagree with what we're doing, and we hear those, and we move along with our work. But overwhelmingly, our church, both organizationally and as individual members, are very supportive and in solidarity with the work that we're doing. And we are very privileged to build on the foundation of people who have been doing this work before us. So as early as the 1990s or before, our church has been engaged through the activities of members or other bodies with the work of anti-racism and reparations. So over the years, we've done various education projects to educate our church family about systemic racism through things like church-wide Sunday school classes and guest speakers. And then over the years, we've also joined forces with other organizations to do things like voter registration. But one example I would like to call your attention to in particular is the one you see here on the screen. So in 2021, a task force, our church formed a task force to reckon with the presence of a stained glass window that depicted Confederate general and enslaver Stonewall Jackson in our sanctuary. It had been there since the building was built in the 1930s. And so this task force reckoned with the presence of the window and ultimately recommended removing the window, which we did in 2023. And you can see that we didn't simply erase it completely, but left an outline so that we could remember what we had done by having him in our sanctuary. But an important thing that the task force that became our reparations ministry team did was acknowledge that the removal of the window was inward facing. It was, we could feel good that we no longer had to look at him, and we shouldn't have had him in our sanctuary to begin with. But the outward-facing act of reparations that our team recommended was toward scholarships for Black students. And so with the support of our church's governing body of elders, we directed funds to the Pittsburgh Promises Advancing Educators of Color program, as well as the Neighborhood Academy for scholarships for Black students. So that is to say, this is not while the work that you'll hear about today is a first step, it is not the first step, and we are building on the foundation of the work of those who have come before us. So why this project in particular? First, we believe that truth-telling is a part of reparations. It is not the only part. We acknowledge that there are connections to wealth and power and restoring wealth and power that we need to do. Second, the truths that we have found out in the project to learn about our connections to enslavement, they challenge us to live our beliefs. And last, the truths show how we ourselves benefit from the very systems we seek to dismantle. And we've also found that this research provides a very tangible way for our members and visitors and people to engage with these very difficult concepts of dismantling, facing, and confronting white supremacy. So I would like to take you back to the bill of sale, the receipt that you saw at the beginning. You'll remember we were looking at a receipt of the sale of two women, Nell and Paul, by the enslaver Jacob Negley, our church's founder and donor, to a man named Robert Spencer. This was all we had to begin with. This was the first piece of evidence that we had. And so, over the course of a year, we learned that Nell and Paul were two members of a family. They were the middle generation between two generations that we found out about. So their mom and dad were Savara and Sam. Their brothers and sister were Jack, Suki, and Isaac. And they themselves gave birth to children while they were still enslaved. Those children's names are Frank, Het, and Maria. So over the course of that year of research, we spent a lot of time uncovering truths about the family's lives. And to do that, we had to look in archives as far away as Philadelphia and Ohio. And it's notable that we were not doing traditional genealogical research. We were looking at property records, that is, the records of human beings being bought and sold, human beings being bequeathed and inherited, receipts for sales. And so we were having to be detectives and find that story because in many cases people tried to hide it. It was either not given its due or it was hidden on purpose. And so in the process of uncovering the details that we uncovered, we encountered a lot of larger truths. Truths about power structures, truths about the city of Pittsburgh, and truths even about how our country was founded. So we shared an extended family history with our congregational community in June of 2025. So this is still relatively new information for our church members. And as part of our sharing of that information, we also shared with them these larger truths, and they're really the confrontation of myths and lies that we should join together in overcoming. So I'm going to share a few of those larger truths with you today. So many of you are probably familiar with the myth that says that enslaved people did only unskilled labor. We know that this is a myth, it's a lie, and the lives of this family confront that myth and that lie. Here you see an advertisement in the newspaper. The man in this advertisement is Sam. So Sam, the patriarch, was a skilled tradesman. And here the year is 1795, and Sam is being sold along with Savara and their infant son, Isaac. His enslaver, Conrad Weinbittel, a name that you might recognize from street signs, his enslaver, Conrad Weinbittel, has died. And Jacob Negley, our founder and donor, who is Conrad Weinbittel's son-in-law, is participating in tearing apart this family. We see here in this advertisement, looking for clues, that Sam is by trade a tanner. Now, Sam made leather, and that was a very valuable commodity in Pittsburgh, which at the time was still very much a frontier environment. So Sam would have spent long days away from his family, tending to hides, working with dangerous chemicals that could burn his skin, and generally being among a really noxious and smelly set of items, from animal carcasses to those dangerous chemicals. So one thing that we know from our research is that Sam was born in 1755. So if we do the math, he is about 20 years old at the time of the American Revolution. And now, although we don't know exactly where Sam was at that time of his life, it is highly likely that he was already working in Conrad Weinbittel's tannery, supplying leather that was used by the Patriots, who were fighting under the banner of all men created equal, and all at the time that he himself was enslaved. So another pernicious myth that the truths of this family's lives counters is the myth that Pennsylvania was a free state. And this we have noticed in presenting this information, there are a lot of people who still believe this lie. So Pennsylvania had the Act for the Gradual Abolition of Slavery, but that act did not free a single person on the day it was passed, as many of you probably know. It was exactly what the name implies. It was gradual. So the act said that babies born to enslaved mothers after March 1st, 1780 were legally required to be freed when they turned 28. And this act is often the reason for the confusing use of the term indenture, when a more accurate phrase would be term enslavement. And although Nell and Paul and their siblings were legally required to be freed when they turned 28, they were enslaved for those years. That was their practical reality. So this here on the screen is another bill of sale, another receipt, and it is from 1813. This one shows that Paul, Nell's sister, was sold yet again to another powerful man, another powerful white man in Pittsburgh, whose name is still on street signs and in the names of our neighborhoods. His name was William Wilkins. So Paul would likely be enslaved by William Wilkins until the end of her term enslavement in 1816. So the last myth that I'm going to talk to you about today is the lie that Northern enslavement was somehow kind and gentle enslavement. So in restoring some degree of truth about the lives of this family, we confront the lie that Northern enslavement was somehow kind and gentle. And two examples of this stand out, and this is where I will be talking about violence. So Northern enslavement posed the same dangers to unfree people as enslavement everywhere, and among those were murder and rape. So what you see here is essentially a wanted notice for Philip Weinbittel. Philip Weinbittel was the brother-in-law of one of our founders and donors, Jacob Negley. So in this notice, we learn that Philip Weinbittel has gone on the run after murdering a man he enslaved. Although none of the official court documents name the enslaved man, the collections of stories about prominent Pittsburghers do tell the story about a man named Jack, a recently freed black man who was, quote, coveted by a wealthy landowner. Shortly after being freed, Jack was found murdered in a clump of trees. The time and the details of these stories pieced together, doing that detective work, uncovering the hidden details, reveal the hidden truths, and we are quite confident that Jack is the person who was murdered by Philip Weinbittel. And it is no surprise, but it is still devastating that Philip Weinbittel was acquitted of that murder. Another example of the danger of violence is that in a registry of births of babies to enslaved mothers that was kept at the time of gradual abolition, we learned that Nell and Paul's children, Frank, Het, and Maria, are noted as what race they are. Frank is noted as, quote, black, while Het and Maria are noted as mixed race or mulatto. And while we don't know the circumstances of their conception, it is quite possible that Nell and Paul did not consent to have those children or to conceive them. So earlier I said that our church sees truth-telling as a reparative action, one part of reparations. And for us, we're at the very beginning of a process that we acknowledge will never be finished. So this is step one. There is more to come, and Dr. Harris-Shentz is going to tell you about what we've done so far and some possible future directions. So Dr. Harris-Shentz.
Thank you, Holland. First of all, I want to say that all of you have to join me in saying a very, very special thank you to this woman. She is the researcher. She is the person who has combed the files, who's made the travel to Philadelphia. She is absolutely a researcher par excellence, and probably the most humble person I have ever met. So I just want to give her that shout out. Okay, my name is Beverly Harris-Shentz, and as I said to you before, I'm a fairly recent member of East Liberty Presbyterian Church, but an avid member of the church and of the Facing Systemic Racism Committee, because I think we are really doing what I think is God's work. We are adding to the wisdom that's known about Black people who were enslaved by very prominent people, and that information has been lost to most of us. We've walked on those streets and seen all those names, but not known to whom they actually belonged. And clearly, this is one part of the lives those people led. I'm not disavowing other parts of their lives, but this is a part that nobody has known about. So what I'm going to talk to you about is the programs that we've done to educate inside and outside our church. So the first slide is that we actually assembled, with Holland's help and guidance, the research, but then it was critical to share this information with ELPC and with the broader community, and I want to describe our progress in that regard. So this first slide shows you something that we've been doing. She's going to show you slides, and I'm going to give you information. So first of all, it was important internally that we share the information about Nell and Paul and the family. So we had meetings primarily with Holland, with the pastors and all of the staff of ELPC. They needed to know where they worked and who they were working for and how that came to be. Second, we had meetings with Session. And as Holland has told you before, she's a member of Session, she's an elder, and Session, for those of you who are not Presbyterian, is the equivalent of the Board of Trustees of the church. They actually organize and are the elected body that govern the church. So she met with Session to tell our Session elders what was going on in our church 200 years ago. And finally, there was a meeting with the Pittsburgh Presbytery. The Pittsburgh Presbytery is the regional governing board of all the churches, Presbyterian churches in this region. She met with them as well to give them an insight into what was going on. After having done that, we then met with congregants, and we had 2 meetings. The first of those was June 29th, and this slide shows you from that first meeting. We had a full presentation by Holland, followed with questions and answers. We had about 120 of our members in attendance. They were, quite frankly, I think, awed by what they heard. Stunned is a word. People were able to ask questions, but basically that meeting was informational. We wanted to share the information first. On October the 26th, we had a second meeting with the congregation, and that was a briefer form of Holland's presentation, but it was followed by extended table discussion. Each table was given an aspect of the lives of Nell and Paul and its relationship to our current reality, and to talk about how they felt about that, to give them an opportunity to share their feelings, to share their views, and to talk in community with each other, which is something that Alex is great at, and he's going to lead us in that discussion after I've done. Slide 2, please. We had also other opportunities to share this history, and this is important. Holland prepared this whole document, this research document that is significant, but that was too much to be able to share on the quick. So she decided, with our encouragement, to create a 4-page summary of the story of this family. And that 4-page summary is extremely enlightening. It includes also documents, and it is available now for distribution in hard copy, but it is also available if you get the QR code and you'd like to read that document. It's very informative and enlightening. It gives you the overview. So we created a 4-page summary. In addition, currently there's something called the Story Walk, and that's what you see on this slide. The Story Walk is a visual presentation of the Nell and Paul history that visitors can actually physically walk through with large posters, poetry, prayers, and journaling opportunities. And this is intended for an up-close and personal involvement with this information. So if you stand in front of a bill of sale that you've never seen before, your reaction to that is quite different than hearing about it. I, for one, had never seen a bill of sale. And when I saw it, it was a different experience. To think that my ancestors were also, at some point, on a bill of sale. So that's something that I think is really important. And this story walk will be available for the month of February in the church building. I invite you all to come and walk through our story walk. Church is open every day except Monday. And if you go to the desk on Highland, they will lead you the way, and you can look at the story walk and experience it for yourself. We had visits of the ELPC parishioners to the Heinz History Center archives. The History Center has been extremely important to us in the work that Holland has done. They've been the staff has been very generous, and we had members of our church, also members of our committee, to go through that archive and look at the documents, and that's pretty amazing. We could see bills of sale, county birth records, indenture agreements, freedom papers. We could actually lay hands on that. They allowed us to see them. We also have done external presentations. We did a presentation at Bethel AME Church. There were 35 attendees. We did a presentation with the Church Without Walls. There were 15 attendees. And now we're talking to you at the Pittsburgh Racial Summit. Thank you so much for allowing us that privilege. Slide 3, please. We have also other options. As a consequence of the meetings that I mentioned to you, we ask our parishioners, what do you think we should do now? Where should we go moving forward? What kinds of things should we do with this information? How do we make it available? What kinds of reparations might be possible? These are all conversations. And these are the suggestions that we've had and the options that we have to expand the knowledge of Nell and Paul. We are revisiting the text used for church tours. As you saw from the photograph, if you haven't seen it in person, we have a beautiful building. And there are tours of that building, and in that building are beautiful things to see. There are beautiful stained glass windows. And we're thinking that the tour should be revised to include information about the family that in part made that building possible. We have segments of the Nell and Paul history have appeared in our ELPC newsletter that comes out once a month, and we want to continue that. And I should go back a step to say that on the way here, I mentioned to Holland that perhaps we should have the story walk as a Lenten practice in our church, that every year in Lent we put that up as a way to lament our past. We've talked about a plaque for inside or outside the building that mentions Nell and Paul. The possibility of a commission of artwork, stained glass window, tapestry, sculpture, something that represents this history and the people who are responsible. A dramatic performance of musical composition is being discussed. We have, in case you're not aware, the Hope Academy in our building. And we've talked to, in this conversation, is there something we could do dramatically or musically and present it to the population of our church? I am strong as a long-term academic. I really feel strongly that this research that I think is, as I say, par excellence, ought to be published. So I've suggested to Holland that we submit it to Presbyterian Outlook, a monthly publication, or the Presbyterian Historical Society in Philadelphia, where she has gone for some of her research, that they might include it, or an academic publication focused on history and literacy. And as I was preparing these remarks, I looked up the Journal of African American History, and perhaps we should submit it there, because this is, of course, history. This last slide, please. And finally, under discussion, when we talk about reparations, the first thing that comes to mind for many people is financial reparations. But that is only one type of reparations. Reparations are very broadly defined as to what we might do. But under discussion, we've had a suggestion of named endowed scholarships, perhaps. We have other scholarships that Holland mentioned. Or some form of financial reparation for the African American community in East Liberty, because that's where Nell and Paul spent their lives. Thank you.
All right, as introduced before, my name is Alex. We're going to go into a discussion portion of our event or our session. If anyone could raise your hands, are you a part of an institution, a church, anything? I mean, BPEP, you want to raise your hands real quick just to note? What we're trying to do is bring this down to a level that we're relatable. As noted within the goals, what's the theme again for the session? For the there we go. The purpose that we're aiming for is to, and you'll see this document right over here, it's a process of kind of being able to evaluate your own work, your own placement within the work of justice work itself, and we're just going to kind of talk about certain elements that matter in regards to moving that work forward. So the process of this session will go, I'm going to ask a question, Holland and Bev are going to model the question in regards to their own experiences with the church, and then I'm going to ask one of you all to be able to kind of give a testimony in regards to your relationship to institutions that are also connected. Given the fact that we're not going to be able to push this forward just as a church, respectfully, just as a membership of 800, reparations isn't a movement that should be done by a lone institution. So a lot of this work, as we're doing here, is a part of that process of bringing people together, bringing other institutions together, and also being able to provide a model for other institutions to engage in this work themselves and get that connected. So the first question is going to be regarding where your institution is right now. Because reality, we have to start where we actually are, not where we wish we were. And a lot of justice work falls apart because we plan from aspiration instead of reality. If we are honest about what stage we're in, we could choose the strategies that actually fit our capacity instead of burning ourselves trying to perform progress. So I'm going to ask Holland and Beverly, where would you honestly place East Liberty Presbyterian Church?
I would say that we are at the very beginning, step one, with regard to this story, with regard to other anti-racist education and action. I would say we are probably further along, and that is thanks to those folks who have gone before us. Beverly, would you like to add?
Yeah, I would say too that we are, as Holland says, at the beginning with the work around Nell and Paul, but we've done some amazing things, I think, with the Facing Systemic Racism Committee. I just wanted to blow the horn. I didn't do these things, so I can blow somebody else's horn. But before I was involved, there have been sessions on healthcare disparities. During the pandemic, we had lots of Zoom sessions on issues related to race. We had, at one point, I remember there was one summer where we had, I think it was the summer of, it would be 2021, I think. Nobody was going back to church yet. We had a list online of books that people were reading, films that they were seeing, and we were asked to recommend 1,000 things that you should read this summer. And it was amazing. You know, Isabel Wilkerson and Kendi and people like that, and films were being read and commented on online. and that was a part of the effort of facing systemic racism. So it's things like that that tell me that we have really taken some good steps.
Awesome, thank you. So I'm gonna go to the audience now. Format, I'm gonna ask you to just say your name, and then to the question, where would you place your organization or your institution? Does anyone want to share? Or, Will, you wanna?
Sure. So I'm William Anderson. Let me stand up. Back to you. From BPEP. And I would say that our institution right now is forward thinking and collaborating with other organizations to because our main focus is that, is in voting, because, voting is the true power and our true pathway to reparations. And I would say I was one of those people that believed that Pennsylvania was more of a free state. And as I'm taking notes of some street names we have to change because they're not because I didn't realize that they were named after slave owners. So now that just gives us a little more work that we have to do, and basically informing the community about what's going on and where these names of these streets came from. And as you all did with, changing, the picture in the window in your church. And, like I said, as an organization, we are moving forward with bringing more collaboration and bringing more exposure to the plights of the African American community, especially in Pittsburgh, where we sit, because as we know, a few years ago there was a study that said that if African Americans from Pittsburgh moved anywhere in the country, their lifestyle and everything would improve instantly. And I just have a testimony of that, as I just moved my daughter to Georgia back in September. And since she's been there 5 months, her salary went from $10 an hour to $32 an hour. She's able to get a 5-bedroom apartment for $1,500. So that just proves the fact that how her lifestyle has improved, that she has moved to a place where all of her bosses are African-American females, that she calls me and tells me how shell-shocked she is because she's never seen this before. So we just have a long way to go in Pittsburgh and the most livable region to make it stand up to that for African-Americans and people of color.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I guess speaking of institutions, who's a city resident? That's the institution we're all a part of, right? Any city residents right there? As noted, Negley, Winbiddle, Conrad, what else we got? Spencer. So we have a few streets in East Liberty. Yeah, and look, we'll get there. We'll get there. So we're going to talk about levers. If anyone knows what a lever is, we're just talking about the spheres of influence that move things along. So a lever, as you've seen with a rock, it may be a stick that's just pushing it up to release some friction. In this situation, it may be leadership. It may be your place on the board. So I want to talk to Holland. What levers actually move things at East Liberty Presbyterian?
So Dr. Beverly and I both mentioned our elders. They are part of a body called Session, and that is the governing body of our church. They are the people who vote on essentially where the money goes, where the church's energy goes. And I would say that as someone, I am relatively new to that position, I think it has been good to be able to be at that table and to tell people firsthand what we have found out, and to be able to advocate for this work, whether it is the removal of the Stonewall Jackson window, or whether it is telling the truth about our connections to enslavement. So that's the main one that comes to mind. But it's also the congregational community. We have felt a lot of support and solidarity from people who are not active in the activities of our committee. Those people have come to the story walk that Dr. Beverly told you about. They have asked us for copies of the summary. They are telling other people, and so those, I think, both the institutional lever and the lever of community are important to us. And do you want to want to add?
To follow up on that question, I wanted to ask which levers did you think didn't matter? Like
Say it again?
a lever that didn't matter, that you thought didn't matter, but actually pushed things forward.
Well, I guess the church has the designation, a Matthew 25 congregation. And that designation means that that Bible verse talks about doing for the least of these, the vulnerable and upholding them. And I never really thought about that as being so important. But it was very important when you could turn it around and say, well, you know, we are a Matthew 25 church. This is a part of our charge. And all of a sudden, it was like, oh, well, yeah. You know, so labels matter, I think. And I think that's something that we really often ignore, that there are things that we say we do, but we don't really do them. And reminding people that we're supposed to be following that is important, I think.
All right, to the movers and shakers in the room, I know there's someone here who has moved something along. Who wants to offer something? Please share your name.
My name is Yvonne Rainey. I'm the mouth from the South, on with VIP Voting is Power, the John Lewis Transformed with Justice, and a member of Pittsburgh Higher Ground Praise Ministry. And most of all, I'm boots on the ground with Mr. Tim Stevens and others. What we have been doing is to advocate and educate in our community about voting and how important it is to each and every one of us. We're out here through rain, shine, sleet, or snow, like the mailman, to get the message out and to make sure that our communities that's in social disparities and equality will not be passed by. And I am so proud to work with such a dynamic team. We call him Father Tim Stevens and Miss Lorraine. And what I challenge to everyone in this room is to make sure that you're out there advocating and educating. Don't talk above the community, talk the plain language, because the church is the foundation. As you go back to the movement of the churches, that is the pivotal point that we must continue to go back to, the foundations of our community. So I always say, each one teach one. If you walk it, you better talk it. Because every time I turn around, people are placating to the game of voting. Keep it real. We are in a pivotal time right now for humanity, social justice, social change, and giving honor to the late, great Reverend Jesse Jackson, for he is one of the warriors that has been out here. And I ask you, are you a warrior? Are you set by and fan by? Keep it real. And blessings to you all.
Thank you. Oh, you got, what to say? You got something to say to him? Mention boots on the ground, which goes into our next conversation about what role do you often play? Not everyone's role in justice work looks the same. Some people start things, some people connect dots, some people do the quiet work that keeps everything from collapsing. The question is about being honest about your role you naturally play so you're not forcing yourself into someone else's lane. Bev, what role do you most often play when this work gets hard?
I'm often asked to be the spokesperson. But basically, that's the role I'm often asked to play, but I'm willing to play any role. You know, I think sometimes it's important to make sure people understand that the people in the kitchen are important people, and I'm absolutely willing to be in the kitchen.
Thank you for being a spokesperson and all of what you do.
No, actually, Holland, how has your role shifted? Because you've played a few different roles. How does that, how's your role shifted over time at Kingsley,
I'm sorry.
at East Liberty Presbyterian Church?
How has my role shifted?
Yeah.
I think my role has shifted probably from a supporter to a researcher and, I say humbly, leader of the work to tell the truth about this. And so I have been most comfortable behind the scenes in the past, and Beverly and I were talking before the session about things that really light your soul on fire, and I have found that this work is something that lights my soul on fire. I believe Howard Thurman has a quote about that: "Find what you love and go do that." And so my work has shifted to be in the research and humbly in the leadership of this particular thing because it lights my soul on fire.
Now the audience. Anyone want to provide an answer in regards to what role do you often play within this justice movement?
Hi, my name is Perlina Story. The role I play is chair for the NAACP Criminal Justice Committee. And what I have been doing throughout the years is working with NAACP under the leadership of Tim Stevens, who I have learned a lot from. And what I have done there is that I evaluate people's complaints, set them up in different categories, identify the person that abused them, make sure that the person that abused them, the justice is given to those people, help people that have been injured receive justice. That's my fight for life, to help people obtain justice, and the people that hurt other people be convicted or something happened, that they received what they gave out, put it that way. But I'm a fighter for justice, and that's my work for the rest of my life. And I have been doing it for about 50 years now.
Hi, I'm Darlene. I'm a recent transplant. I'm from Pittsburgh, but a recent transplant from Philadelphia. And one of the reasons why, besides I just wanted to stay still, that I stayed in this session recently, I'm looking at a lot of slave narratives on YouTube. I think I rewatched Roots and something else, and then all of a sudden these slave narratives came up, and I found out that a lot of the people, they plan well, they organize well, they might have waited a whole year before they did a rebellion, but I mean the resources and it's just phenomenal, the intelligence, the planning, the organization. They might have been upset about a family member getting sold, but they might have waited a year to do a rebellion to try to free 50 people. So I would say to you, I don't know what you would, I guess you put slave narratives, but it's just phenomenal. I can't get it off my TV. So, and I'm also involved with Perlina and her Justice Committee with the NAACP.
Thank you. I also want to just highlight the important role of listening and sharing. You can do that all the time, wherever you go, and it makes a lot of powerful movements. It brings people into the rooms, and it allows us to move forward together. Next, we want to talk about who helps sustain the work. Justice work is ecosystem work. If it depends on one person or one organization, it will not last. This question is about making our networks visible. Who do we lean on? What grounds us? And where we are isolated. So, panel, what or who networks, I think you mentioned it already with Matthew 20, what networks keep this work alive, and when momentum is dropped?
For me, I think it's the momentum of the people on FSR. And we had two committees originally. We had the Facing Systemic Racism Committee at the church, and then we had the Reparations Committee, two separate. And we realized that it was sort of ridiculous, and we put them together, and there are more people there, and there's more energy there. But we also realized, and I think that's important, that sometimes you have a sense that in order for anything to happen, everybody has to be there every day, all the time. Well, that's not life. Life gets in the way. You have to pick up your kid, your mom gets sick, you have to go see about your sister, your girlfriend, is whatever. So once we realize that people can be very important to whatever you're doing by taking on a task, that they take on, they see through, but they don't have to come to every meeting to do that. You know, being able to sustain the work means understanding when and how people can help, and letting them tell you what their love is and how they can best help, and letting them do that, carry it through, and then step back and let somebody else step up. I think that's probably, for me, what's most valuable, the knowing that there are people there you can call to help and they'll step in if they need it, but also that you can say, well, I can't do that one. I've got something else, and somebody else will step up. You know, nobody has the whole handle on it. You know, there's no one person who is all-encompassing and all important, and each of us has to recognize it'll go without us. But we just have to help where we can.
Well said.
I'm just going to go ahead and ask Tim Stevens this question, honestly. He's been here for so long. How have you been able to sustain this work? I mean, even being here.
What?
Yeah, how do you sustain the work that you've been doing for all over this time?
You know what? I just texted my friend and said, I wish I brought my energy drink. I'm serious. I wiped myself out with the speech. Just being old and black. Well, I've been an activist for about 55 plus years now, and I basically, about 2 weeks ago, I've been kidding about this for years, but I was serious about it, and my son knows, and my niece and great niece, and some bee peppers. I said, before I die, I'm going to have a small legal pad put in a casket for the casket. I'm going to have a small legal pad for the casket, and I said the legal pad is going to say, African Americans vote in each and every election. Well, the top of it would say, our work is not yet done, because what's going on right now, it really isn't done. And then under that will be African Americans vote in each and every election, and then my signature. So I did that about 2 weeks ago. So the legal pad is ready. I'm not ready to go anywhere, but it's ready. But people know I have a little sense of humor. I want a pen and a cell phone in the casket. So when people walk by, they will laugh if they knew that they knew I have a sense of humor about this. They'll say, that Negro was serious about this. But my hope is, as I crafted what I did today, was to energize people, mobilize people, inspire people a little bit to do what has to be done, because the work will continue. And my orientation has just been that way. I always kid about Jones Funeral Home. And I say, my intention is, unless my brain goes more than it has, and my body goes more than it has, my commitment is I will continue to do what I do until I can't do it anymore. And my hope is, I kid Dalen A. Davis is our vice chair now. We believe in intergenerational leadership. He's 31 and I'm 80. And I said, Dalen, do you think you'll still be doing this stuff? These many years later, we just laugh. So I just have a commitment to do what I do. That's my orientation, has been my orientation for decades. And, you know, I lie down a little bit more than I used to. You know, I do. People tell me to take care of myself. I don't know if I'm too good about that. But that's my orientation. And I think that everyone, when I said today, those of you who heard that, everyone in this room can do stuff. Not everybody's going to start an organization, either locally or nationally, and that's okay. But you have people you can influence within your circle of life. Or you may have more power than you think if you have a complaint in life that you want to deal with, and you initiate whatever and stick with it and gain people to be your partners. You don't know what may happen. 40 years ago when I initiated BPEP, I didn't know BPEP was going to be here 40 years later. I didn't know that. I just stood up in front of a bunch of people and said, I'm going to initiate this project because I was upset there were no black people on city council in the mid-'80s. Did y'all know that? There had been 2, but there weren't any in the mid-'80s. When Bill Robinson was not renominated, and Katie Urbis was not nominated. There were no blacks nominated by the Democratic Party. And you know, black folks have been the most consistent people supporting the Democratic Party in the history of the party. I didn't like that. So we were asked, I was in this landmark thing, and we were asked to name a complaint in life. It could be with your relationship, it could be with a job, you want a new car, new house, new apartment, or with the world around you. I chose the world around you. In me, it was, there's no blacks on city council. So I got up in front of this group, which is mainly white people, by the way. I said, we're going to start this project called, I made it up, called BPEP, Black Political Empowerment Project. Now, what was funny about it, and I'm done, in the early years or months, I wanted it to be called BPEP. But people would say BPEP because that's how I wrote it down, because they didn't know it was supposed to be. So what I did, I put a hyphen. So you have to say BPEP. So my point about that is you never know what your powers may be. I didn't know this thing was going to be around this long, or even have the influence that we've been able to have, at least at times. So you have to believe in yourself, right? Have something that drives you, something that motivates you, something that upsets you. But upset without action doesn't mean anything. I always tell black people, we have been victims, obviously, in this country. We have been victims, but we're more than victims. We're queens and kings, and we have to rise above the victimization to activation and activism. So there you go. Did that tell you what you want?
Definitely. Appreciate it.
I would like to thank each and every one of Mr. Tim, Ms. Lorraine, Mr. Sebastian, and Ms. Judy Clack from the League of Women Voters. I'm going to tell you why. Pittsburgh did not recognize the late, great John Lewis here. We started this July 17th for Pittsburgh, the first time Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania had a John Lewis Day. This is what we started here because we want to educate and advocate about the late, great John Lewis / Transformative Justice with Dr. Barbara Irwine and Darrell Jones out of DC. I went to one of the conference and I was just overwhelmed that here in Pittsburgh, we did not, as black people, did not recognize the late, great John Lewis. Something's wrong with this picture. So here I am, out from the South, got with Mr. Tim, Miss Lorraine, and Miss Judy Clack and Sebastian, and I said, we're gonna do this. And we've been doing this for 5 years. Coming up, July 17th, mark your calendar. Please join us, because this is about us. Boots on the ground and get in good trouble. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you for those answers. I think it really speaks to the power that taking, your small frustrations and really leaning on to your relationships after that really build on to the progress of our movement. I even just want to honor Miss Bev over here, because when I first came around the church around 21, first thing I was like, oh, the church with Stonewall Jackson? I'm good, right? I was like, why would I take that on, right? I came to another session that Bev was doing, and honestly, it's just like since then, she's been, hey, you should show up to this, you show up to that, and those relationships that you honor, the intelligence that that they share amongst you, the wisdom, it keeps and sustains the movement. Sometimes it isn't the intellectual thing. Sometimes it isn't necessarily the subject matter. I'm not honestly the great, I'm not so enthused about this subject. I think there's still more we can get to, but that's my frustration to take it on to the next level and then to build my relationships on. So I appreciate the things that you guys are sharing in regards to how things come about and which we're able to have this conversation today, thanks to the work 50 years ago. What change are we actually aiming for in this situation? We use the word justice very broadly. It can mean a lot of different things in practice: reckoning, repair, governance, power, culture, policy. If we don't get specific about what kind of change we're aiming for, we end up doing a little of everything and sustaining none of it. Panel, what type of change was realistic to pursue at first?
Well, I think the change that was necessary was education. You know, if you don't know something, you can't do anything. You know, and people always say, well, I didn't know that. Well, we're going to tell you. And then once you know it, you cannot claim gross ignorance. And I really believe that one of the things that's so important is making people aware of important issues that they have not learned, that they were not aware of. I mean, just a personal story. You know, I went from kindergarten to a PhD, and I had, in my life, I had a black teacher in 3rd grade. I had 2 black teachers in high school, two black teachers in junior high, 2 in high school, none at the university, and none at my PhD. So my knowledge of black history, although I have what many people would say is a superior educational background at the schools that people think are really important, was this. Everything I know about black history, I taught myself. I read, I found out, I looked for. And I have a friend, a very dear friend, who grew up in North Carolina and went to segregated schools. She knows everything. And she will say, Beverly, you don't know that? And I said, who were your teachers and who were mine? So education is all important. And if we now know, with all of the book banning and with all of the unlearning and with all of the erasure, it is our responsibility now to teach, because it's not going to be there if we don't do it. So that's my call. I think it's just so crucially important that we educate everybody about the issues that they are not aware of, about the history that they're not learning, about the events they should be aware of. I think that's critical.
I can add to that, and not very much because you've said it, most of it, but I did want to add that we have realized the importance of education. At least within our predominantly white church, we recognize the importance of having a diverse panel of presenters often, because people are responsive to different voices, and that's a way to use our community. And then I think that as far as action, we talk a lot about our education and our action, those 2 partner approaches. We found that when we ask people to, participate in a march, somebody is maybe not necessarily going to have an idea for an action on their own or be willing to lead it, but I think that giving people those bite-sized actions that they can take part in, that is one thing that is possible right now and that we have great enthusiasm for, I think, in our church as an organization.
Thank you for that. And once again, I'm going to cheat the audience. I'll reach out to everyone afterwards. But in regards to change that you're actually aiming for, I want to highlight Mr. Randall Taylor here in regards to some of the work that he's doing. So if you don't mind sharing what that may be for you in regards to what type of change that you are currently aiming for.
Yeah,
what
kind of change?
You're going to change agent.
Part of the change that my name is Randall Taylor. Forever will be a displaced resident of Penn Plaza. And so the change I seek is change around housing, to make this a city for, not just for some, but a Pittsburgh for all. And so we want to work to try to take the profit out of how, we want to change everything around how housing is looked at. And you'll hear a little bit of that on our presentation on the panel. So
Tell them where your panel is.
oh, I don't know. But it's at 2 o'clock somewhere around here and stuff. So, Alex, if you don't mind me mentioning something real quickly that that I've been talking about when I first heard it, like maybe 30 years ago. So you realize that there's 4 streets in Homewood named after slave labor camps. I don't do slave plantations, makes it sound too nice. So 4 streets in Homewood named after slave labor camps. Come on, y'all know them? Monticello? Come on, who's Monticello? Who knows their history? Thomas Jefferson. Mount Vernon. Hermitage. Andrew Jackson. In Idlewild, which was, I believe, James Madison. And you realize only one of them freed their enslaved people when they died, and that was Washington. And Martha didn't free hers. But the bottom line, as I was saying, building movements for housing justice, Forster 311 at 2 o'clock. So we'll be talking about a whole new world around housing and finances. So what I was saying on that, wouldn't that be something out of this Housing Justice Summit that finally, that people mentioned this for 30 years, that we actually got that changed? And you know why it's so important to get that changed? Because we have people in our community that need to be remembered that people don't. Tim Stevens, remember, is Reverend Leroy Patrick, who integrated the Highland Park pool. Some people here remember Dwayne Darkins, a man who helped pay people's light bills. He was a city councilman and things like that. So we can go on and on with people that we need to remember in our community. So wouldn't that be something, Alex, if that came out of this, that we got those horrific names, because we would never go for a street named Treblinka or Auschwitz in the Jewish community, nor should we. But we go for that. But as Doctor, as you said, it's because we don't know. Exactly right. So now we're educated about it, then we do something about it, just like Tim does.
Thank you so much. I like that. Okay, where we at?
Ask him to repeat the streets.
Oh, sorry. Who?
Repeat the streets. Ask him to repeat the name.
Oh,
of
repeat the
street.
street.
Idlewild, Monticello, Mount Vernon, and Hermitage.
Thank you, Alex. I'm Lorraine Cross, and I am the BPEP chair. And one of the ways that I see that we can make the change is to follow the philosophy of BPEP, is that we vote in each and every election, and we force these politicians to hear our voice.
Mm-hmm.
2 minutes? Awesome. All right. Towards the last question, what makes this sustainable? And we talked about this a little bit in regards to how heavy the work is. It's long, emotionally demanding. And if we don't talk about sustainability, burnout becomes a default. This question is about actually what keeps people in the work over time, not just what sounds good. So we're going to talk about our relationships in this standpoint. So I'm going to ask, what has helped you be able to bring people into this movement? Obviously, maybe Ms. Bev can speak to that.
I think people being curious, and it's not necessarily anything I'm doing, and I'll confess I'm not good at asking people to help or finding things for people to do, and that is a good lesson for me. Our committee has been very willing to do a lot, and so Dr. Beverly and I were talking about letting people do things before this started. So yeah, that's been a lesson for me.
The lesson I learned, is that what you're asking me?
No, just relationships in regards to just building the work itself.
Well, the relationships are really all important. I mean, as I say, I joined ELPC during the pandemic. I wasn't in the church building for 3 years. I'm an asthmatic. So when COVID was around, I was hiding under the bed, okay? So I was at home. But the one thing that was amazing to me in those 2.5 years when I wasn't in the church, it was the Facing Systemic Racism Committee, and I'll just share that with you. I had written some short stories, and we read those stories. We discussed those stories. There were 150 people on Zoom who read the stories that I wrote. 150 people, and they led me then to write the book that I ultimately wrote with those short stories because of all the support that I got. And I thought, this is crazy. These people don't even know me, you know? But it was because they were supportive. They were there. And that was really just amazing. So asking, and I don't hesitate to ask people, as Alex, I'll walk up to anybody and say, well, you know, we really need you. And I can be persuasive, I think. But I think that's what we have to do. We need all of you. The young woman, Fernanda, who said, we need you all. It's absolutely true. It was such a beautiful story, but we do need everybody. Everybody has a role they can play. And it doesn't have to be the same, but it's something that you can give.
And the audience is like an altar call question. What do you need? What do you need right now in regards to sustaining this work? Is it a person? Is it a movement? If you want to share what that may be for you.
Thank you. I got here late, so if you could just summarize, like, how did you guys come upon finding out that EPC or EPLC was slaveholder? Yeah.
I know you mentioned this before about the 3-year process, like the commissioning.
Sure. We had asked a very general question. We asked a professor from Pitt to tell us about the history of racism and white supremacy. We invited him as a guest speaker, and he not only covered that in his talk, but he also showed us a bill of sale for 2 women who were being enslaved and sold by one of our church's very prominent founders, Jacob Negley. So that was the beginning.
And then our pastor, Patrice, really
Yes.
kept that thing going the last 3 years before she left the church. So that ultimately got the things pushing from that point.
And were you guys able to find out anything more, like as far as like maybe the slaves' lives or their deaths, or if there's like any?
Yes, we pieced together 30 years of family history across 3 generations, and we have a summary up here, and we also have a family tree, and we have a couple of reproductions of the bills of sale that you're welcome to look at. There are QR codes to download things, and we have an entire lengthy talk about what we found out.
Which, Holland, if you can continue. The historian. Yeah, what was the doctor's name again?
Dr. Brock Baylor, it's Bahler, from the University of Pittsburgh.
To that sustainability question, Holland, how would you describe, she mentioned the follow, what happened to the slave family. How would you say that work needs to be sustained? Like, what would you need, or what would the church need to continue growing this particular story? Because as you know, we're a small committee. We don't have the amount of research. So, like, what would that look like to continue what we're doing here?
So I think that one way, and this is not the only way, but something that we have seen is helpful is that for the story walk, Dr. Beverly mentioned, other committees in the church actually put the bulk of that together. We had the first-hand sources, but they provided meditations and poems and things that really kind of strike at their committee's goals. And so I think that the collaboration with other parts of the church is really helpful and will be helpful to sustain the work and take it in the directions that it needs to go.
So we'll close this out now. Thank you all for being a part of this discussion. We want to end by just grounding us in the reality that this work isn't moment work, it is relationship work. The work continues in spaces you go back to, so the most practical question we can leave with is, who do I need to stay connected with so this doesn't become a one-time conversation? We're just going to let you ponder that, actually, because I know we have some time constraints, correct? Or where are we at, Tim, or who?
Yeah, we're at 12:30.
12:30, okay, so we are here. So once again, I do want to thank you all for being a part of this, and I know we want to just remind you all, once again, justice work is ecosystem work. It is slow work. It is relational work. It is sustained through people, networks, and care, not moments alone. And once again, the work that you're able, well, actually the QR code disappeared. Someone took that. Yeah. Sorry, boy. Oh, yeah, please. Yeah, I'm coming. You coming up?
You talked about these 2 ladies who were actually enslaved through the East Liberty Presbyterian Church. In your work, especially you, have you found other local churches being involved in such activity in the past?
Yes. So we mentioned the enslaver William Wilkins, whose name is on various things in Pittsburgh, his family name. William Wilkins was a prominent member of First Presbyterian Church downtown. And one of the things that we found about Wilkins was in the Presbyterian Historical Society's archive in Philadelphia, and it's very telling because Wilkins was a Presbyterian. Spencer, who Jacob Negley sold Nell and Paul to, was a Presbyterian. And so I believe that as Presbyterians, that is something larger we can reckon with. Also, I'm reminded that there was a farmer also who, this is a long story, but I'll try to condense it. Sam Savara and baby Isaac were sold to a farmer in Westmoreland County, and we often think these, rural Presbyterians, they were just poor farmers, but this Logan man, he was a Presbyterian in a small church in Westmoreland County, and he actually enslaved more people that we know about than the ones that we know about from Negley. So that you strike at a question that has a lot of roots. So thank you for the question.
Thank you. Well, first of all, as the Black and White Reunion, one thing that East Liberty Presbyterian Church was very helpful at the very beginning, hosting our meetings and then hosting the Summit Against Racism, until you did your renovations at the church. Pastor Patrice and Pastor Randy Bush were very helpful and through the years providing financial support for us. Also, I wanted to say, talking about sustainability, I know for the planning committee, the Black and White Reunion, as you were saying, relationships were important, not just doing the work, but finding time to have dinners and picnics and things to strengthen those bonds. Also, talking about recruiting people, this is sort of a plug for the closing panel, the intergenerational panel that we're going to have at the end of the summit. Welcoming younger people in, tying them into the movement is important.
Thank you. All right. I believe that's going to end our panel. Alex, you want to have anything else to close us out?
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all.